We're recording it on this, and that's one thing. Then I have to hit broadcast here. Where's that broadcasting? And is it 12 o'clock? Yes, it's 12. So let's go live and see how this sets up. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live at Pathways to Health, and I'm William Bezmen.
And I'm Judith Grant.
And it's great to be here with you guys. And I think we have a pretty interesting and also emotional topic that we're going to talk about, Judith. It's called Honoring All Types of Grief. And Judith, this was an idea that came to you. Maybe you could share with our listeners what you had in mind and how we can bring this forward.
Well, if we're living life as we are as human beings, we're going to go along and experience a whole full range of emotions. You know, we're given all these emotions, everything from love and joy and sadness and grief and excitement and even things like envy and jealousy and anger. There's all types of emotions that we're going to experience depending on what's going on. And grieving and grief in itself is one that we can't avoid. It's not always looked at as grief. Sometimes people call certain things just profound sadness, but the truth of the matter is there are many different types of grief. Not just the grieving that we talk about when we say we've lost someone or something that we've loved.
Which is very powerful and very difficult.
Very, very tremendous. But there are other types of loss that also you will experience, or as human beings will experience, a grieving. And grieving, like we were saying, is like a journey or a process. It's just not in that one moment. It's something that kind of unfolds. And there's grieving when there's a death of a loved one, grieving like, God forbid, a house burns down, or the flood when people lost everything, and earthquakes and such, the loss of possessions. Divorce, right, is another one.
The end of a relationship of any kind, not just marriage or a live-in situation, but even a loss of a friendship, change in any type of relationship whatsoever. There's a grieving process, even if it's a positive thing. If you got a promotion and there's a part of you excited, but maybe you had to leave the department that you enjoyed working with, and as a result, you got promoted and to a whole new environment, or a different situation. So there would be a balance of both, the excitement and then the sadness, or the allowing yourself to grieve. I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's always around relationship to someone or something, and it goes even further than that. It goes to, let's say, all of a sudden you've been diagnosed with a devastating illness, maybe not necessarily life-threatening, but something that's debilitating, where you can no longer do what you once did, a chronic disease, an autoimmune disease, a progressive, let's say, arthritic condition, or neurological.
Injury, or like with a car accident, when so many of our clients, their lives are physically altered. Yes, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, and that's for other times. But what we're talking about here is the loss of their ability to do what they used to do.
Exactly.
One of our people was in her 50s, was very avid adventurous. She was always in good shape. She loved to travel throughout the country. When they opened up a new roller coaster or something, she was a thrill seeker, and she would travel. And after she was in this accident, she could hardly walk anymore, and so there was so many levels of grieving that she had to go through. But as you're talking about the change in your ability to function the way you did before, right? In any way, however you describe it or however you want to look at it, there's always going to feel like a loss of something.
Maybe, again, like a lot of people, especially with particular hobbies or activities, they identify with that particular thing, whether it's baseball, basketball, surfing, skiing, runners, people that are avid runners, and now they can't run anymore because of an injury. There's just layer upon layer. Retirement, it's a happy time, it's a great time, but I've spoken to a lot of people, and what will happen is, in the beginning, it's like, well, whew, this is great, no punching clocks, and then slowly but surely there's this feeling of this emptiness, this space that they're looking to fill once again, especially with somebody whose personality identified with their job or their career. That was their identity, to be a military person or to be a doctor or a lawyer or an Indian chief.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference. That will happen. There's also grieving for empty nest syndrome. Moms and dads that were, a house full of kids, and of course it's part of the life process, and we want to fulfill that. That's our purpose in parenting, is to make our children independent so they have their own life. But there's that empty nest syndrome, and there's that feeling of loss.
Also, with the empty nest syndrome, there's also another type of grieving of a change in how the children would need their parents.
Yeah.
The younger they are, the more hands-on the parenting needs to be, right? Just for common sense, that need the guidance, and when they're very young, they're relying solely on you. But as things change, so then when they do go off to college, when they do get married or move out, and however they do that, there's that whole well, am I needed anymore? Yeah. And grieving. And people who don't move through that, Judith, I think end up extremely anxious and depressed.
Absolutely.
They try to cling to the old. And I know we're going to talk about some other types of things that we grieve. But in all cases, if we deny it, the energy of those thoughts, that lifestyle, those beliefs start to eat away at us, rather than being used productively and in creating something else and redefining yourself. And maybe that's really one of the keys to life, how life keeps giving us these changes so that we can continue to redefine ourselves. Or maybe another way of looking at it is to grow and to expand and to be a better version of ourselves.
And it can call upon us to do that. There was a book many, many, many years ago called Necessary Losses. And I remember it was about how sometimes in losing something, or in order to move forward, there is a certain sense of letting go. For any of you moms out there that gave birth, there was the joy of holding your child, but I remember feeling that void inside, missing the feeling of the baby moving inside of me. So it's every spectrum. And there's, you could say, well, you can't say that the grief of losing pets, please, let's throw that into, that's very important, the relationships, it's love. And people say, well, you can't compare the loss, let's say, of a child to the loss of wellness, and now you can't do what you used to do. And it's not about which one is greater. It's not about which one is more important. It's a fact that each separate incident, each separate event, when there is a feeling of loss, when there is a feeling of change, when there is a feeling of grief or sadness, we have to honor that. And we dishonor it by saying it wasn't that important, or who am I to feel bad about this? There are worse things that can happen. Of course, there are worse things that can happen. I remember my grandmother used to say this, but I know it wasn't hers, that when you put out all your trouble on the table, you'll often pick up your own, meaning that there's always something worse out there. But that doesn't mean that as human beings, as spiritual beings, and to be loving of ourselves, that in those moments of sadness, in those moments, right, of loss or letting go or change, we can't stop and honor that feeling, honor that wounded self, acknowledge that it hurts, acknowledge that there's a sadness, acknowledge that there's even a fear of what the next chapter might look like. Turning that page now and writing a new chapter. And you look at some people, and I think, like when you look at people like Christopher Reeves, when I mean, on the top of the world, his acting career, physically fit, his looks, everything, and how everything changed. And there had to be a point that he had to really embrace all of those losses. And I'm sure that he did. And I think it was through embracing them, accepting this is what I have now. This is what has been given to me. That at that point, and loving yourself enough to say, I still have value. I still have love. I still have gifts. I have so much in my heart I still want to experience. Help me turn that next page and start writing that new chapter. But I think that embracing is the first step.
The key. It's, again, everyone talks about being in the moment, being fully present, Judith, right? Yeah. And that's part of it. It's part of being in the moment when it's joyful, and yet even when it's painful, because by experiencing the pain of an event or an emotion, you're able to move, like I talked about, move through it. You experience it, and then after the feeling comes the thoughts that were behind it. So we must, in order to release it, release the feelings first, then the thoughts come out behind it, and then we can change those thoughts and create new feelings in time. And it doesn't mean just because you feel it for a moment that it's done and then you're moving on the next second. It's really about being in it, not wallowing in it. And there's a difference between being in the moment
and being stuck in the moment.
Being stuck in that drama. Many people, if not all of us at some level, have these dramas that repeat over and over again. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about feeling the feelings, being in that. It happened to me this morning. This morning I was talking to a dear friend who was away on vacation and came back, and we chatted this morning, and his house is up for sale, and he's moving down south. And I had these mixed feelings, very excited for him because I could feel his excitement and what it would do for his lifestyle and so forth. Then there was a part that felt bad for me, that, wow, my friend is gone. And I shared that. I said, well, I'm excited for you, and I feel bad for the loss of losing you. And of course we spoke that, well, there's still the phone and the Zoom and so forth, and that's true. Well, that's true, but there is a change there, and I'm still processing it. And will I get through? Of course I'll get through it, but I can feel it right in here. So it's not about I wasn't in denial, but I touched upon it, and then we had other things we had to do. But even talk about it now with grieving, it was a perfect occasion for me to process some of my own feelings before this talk this morning about grief. And it's many facets of grief. That maybe we could have entitled it that as well.
Yeah, facets of grief, types of
different points. Like if you look at the facets of a diamond, each one of them are meaningful and powerful. Together, it creates the whole experience. But even if we look at that diamond, we don't want to get lost or trapped in any one facet of life's experience. We want to be in it, experience it, and then walk through and come out the other side. hopefully a better person, and with better understanding of self.
And I really think that, we talk about self-love a lot, and you hear it and you read about it all the time, but I think the essence of moving through loss, no matter what kind, does it require a certain degree of self-love and self-worth. After you've gone through the emotional part of it, it's almost a catharsis going through the emotional part. Like William said, then you start to go through the thought bodies attached to it. I remember when our partner Patty passed away, she was my best friend, sister, mother, teacher, mentor, sage. Inhale to my exhale. There were so many parts of our relationship that were so complex. Business partner, friends. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Colleague, co-creator, all those different things. And I remember when she passed away, and even with knowing everything that we know, I remember feeling and even saying more than once that a part of me died with her. And I'm entitled to feel that way. It's a very real thought to the feeling, a very, very real thought to the feeling. If I had gotten stuck in that means that I'm living my life with part of myself missing, which means now I'm not fully living my life the way God intended me to. And
Part
that's
of
what
you
I
would
believe.
be wrapped up in the past relationships and all those different connections that you were describing.
Yeah. And the truth is, life will never be the same.
Right.
It's the truth. You'll hear people say, life will never be the same, whether it's to do with the injury or the illness or the loss of a job or loss of someone you love. Yes, that's true. It will never be the same, but that doesn't mean that you can't create another, again, chapter, another part of yourself. It doesn't mean it's time to close up shop and give up on you, and now not share with the world everything that you have to share. And I kept thinking at one point how disappointed Patty would be in me if I didn't continue this journey with all that I have, with every bit of love and emotion and creative gifts and joy that was inside of me. How would that be honoring her if I close that down permanently? Now, temporarily, yes. And everybody, it's different. Like, you read these books and they're all good. Don't get me wrong about stages of grief. They don't exactly go like that. It's not like on day 42, turn the page and you're in the next stage. To me, it's a journey.
Just a journey, an outline, an idea of what we go through. And it's great. It can help us process it. But we really need to be in that. And as you were talking, Judith, I think in order to process any of these types of griefs or facets of grief that we were speaking about, and the others that we haven't even spoken about, or any that you're thinking of, or that you may be going through as you are listening to this, it depends on the level of consciousness that you're experiencing it with. When we're in the immediate moment of the loss, I think we get narrow into that facet, and it's almost like we're intensely focused on that whole, like hypnotized into that. That's what life is right at this moment. And we need to do that. We need to be, if we keep pushing it away, I don't think that that's the, like we said before, it's not the answer. We never get a chance to embrace it. But many of us keep pushing experiences and feelings down and away. Eventually, they catch up. They call that anxiety. They call it depression. They call that traumatic stress. They have all kinds of labels for not being able to keep pushing. The example I often give with my clients is, I have a drawer and there's a lot of stuff in it, and I open that drawer and say, look, all that in here. If I keep stuffing things in here, it's going to be harder and harder to push that drawer shut. But look at me trying to talk to you. while I'm trying to hold that drawer in, it's going to be draining me. And what would happen the moment I get distracted? Boom, all of these feelings come out, and it can feel like a panic attack or an anxiety attack in some way. So what level of consciousness can you reach? In other words, you're in that moment, but can we start to move through it by asking a question? And I'm not saying you need to have the answer, or just by asking this question that it's going to be resolved. But could there be, do you believe in something greater than self? Do you believe that there's a consciousness, however you describe it, whatever label you want to put on it, that sees more than you see from your five senses and experience life from your five senses? Is there a part of you that sees a bigger picture? And is there another step beyond that? If you believe or even think there might be something like that there, ask, could there be a greater plan? Could there be a bigger plan?
Ask for guidance.
And ask for guidance from your highest, or for your highest and greatest good, from whatever in your heart is the belief to connect with something
whatever
than self.
your faith is, or your spiritual belief is.
Because my point is that when I've done that for myself, or help our clients go through that, there is always something that comes that we couldn't see at that time. And if we stayed in that pattern of just grieving and feeling sorry for the loss and reliving that loss and not moving on with our life,
driving, looking through the rearview mirror,
you will never see what that creator or your own higher self or soul has brought forth. You just will miss it. You'll keep going in circles. And as Judith said, would that one want you to give up your life? In this case, if it was a loss of a loved one, or we've seen it with loss of jobs. Unexpectedly, a company takes over, a bigger company takes over a company, and boom, X number of employees are given their pink slips. And it's devastating, it's scary. How are we going to support the family? How is this going to unfold? But if you can embrace it and work with it, the other thing is, are there signs? And I know last week's talk was on signs, but are you picking up signs that maybe this job could be in trouble, that they're in financial, I'm talking about intellectual signs, not just signs from the universe, that you've been ignoring, that you've been seeing some changes coming. You heard about a merger. What is that going to mean? Should you be looking to expand your horizons to see what other opportunities are out there before the hatchet drops? And maybe in that exploration, you find something greater, and maybe the hatchet wouldn't drop, but if it wasn't for that scare, you would have never looked. Right? Is that making sense? Is that coming across?
Yeah. And we, again, going back to losses and grieving, we're also seeing a lot of this in divorces or the end of long-term relationships, because not everybody obviously marries. But long-term relationship and divorces, I've watched people become completely paralyzed. And we're not talking about paralyzed in the moment. We're talking about paralyzed for months, even years, even to the point of being afraid to ever trust and love again. And that, I don't believe that that's what is meant for us. I don't think that's what is for our highest and greatest good. Again, it's not wrong to feel that at the time, but there's got to be a point. There's got to be a moment, and either by seeking help, someone to talk to that can professionally help you, or like I said, if you're somebody spiritual, your faith, looking beyond that. There's got to be, there was a saying in spirituality, actually it was written in the Bible a while back ago, about sailing through the storm to the safe harbor on the other side. We've got to be looking for that safe harbor. We've got to, like, again, embrace and love ourselves for the pain that we're feeling, understand it, honor the loving experiences that we had prior that brought us to the pain. It's like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Because even in the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the end of a career, the death of someone we've loved, even the end of physical ability, like with Christopher Reeve, it's so important to embrace and honor what we did have. It's not trying to have amnesia and forget that, embrace it, take the good that was from it. Take the good memories. There's always good memories in all of the losses. Take the gifts that it gave us. Take the lessons that it taught us, like we talk about in our core class, Spiritual Journey Within. There's a part called the Transition Bridge, where you look back and you take the gifts, you take the lessons, you take the joy and the happiness and such, and now you bring that forward so that it becomes like a light or a beacon shining on the path in front of you, so that you have tools and abilities to recreate yourself again. And I think that's what Christopher Reeve did. He drew from his strengths, he drew from what he knew, and he used that, and he used the charisma he still had to be a beacon of light for others.
Yeah. And what about some of the incredible veterans that have come back from any of these wars with physical injuries and losses of limbs? And yes, that has to be devastating for them. But some of them are able to move through that and get on with their life. And you see them entering Olympics or getting into physical condition with one leg or two artificial limbs, and how they're rising above this tragedy, and
by embracing it
first. And it's, God only knows that's not easy. That has to be devastating, and take every ounce of strength that they have to come out on that other side. But yet they're leading the way. They're showing us, because so many of us get caught in dramas of everyday life. And when we see someone who, quote, legitimately has a challenge and they're able to move through it, and we look at our life and say, wow, was it really worth all that effort to fight? Now, there are certainly, all of us have very serious considerations and concerns and happenings at times. And again, we're not in any way making fun of that. Please don't hear that. But we're saying that I think the bigger thing is everything happens for a purpose, sometimes much greater than we could see at the moment. And if we allow ourselves to embrace each feeling, not drown in the feeling, experience the feeling, and
love yourself through it
by loving self, by accepting, by saying, is there some reason? How could this have happened? Could there be some other purpose for me to move forward?
Or what is my purpose now? What is my next chapter? Again, not easy. And for everybody, it's going to be different. So you can't ever judge another.
I mean, there's not a cookie cutter?
Nope.
That we put on?
Nope, you can't, because even in moving through different types of grief, a lot of the person's background is going to, their spiritual belief or lack of it is going to impact how quickly they can move through things. Their support system, do they have supportive friends and family, or do they not? What was their past experiences with loss and grief? So there's other factors that it's just so complicated, guys. But I got to tell you, we both believe And it sounds simplistic, and it's not, but it begins with embracing and loving yourself, embracing and understanding that a loss is a loss, and you don't have to explain that or defend that to anybody else.
Mhm.
Especially you pet lovers out there, don't ever feel like you have to defend yourself about the loss of a pet. Love is love, and the depth of I think sorrow and grief is very much in balance with the depth of the love that was experienced, or the depth of the relationship or connection that you had to, again, person, place, or thing. So
we hope that was helpful, and
yeah.
if you have any comments, please put them on your Facebook, and we'll get back to you.
Or any suggestions for other topics.
Yeah, any comments at all, or you could email us at info@pathwaystohealth.com, or on the Facebook page, right? Yeah, yes. Anyway, now here comes the real challenge, and me trying to figure out how to turn off Facebook Live, okay?
So, well, I try to look natural as he plays with the buttons. Right. So
because last week I had trouble with many of you. So anyway, so thank you for joining us. Many blessings to all of you, and with the blessing, I'll figure this out. Anyway.